So early on, I just adopted a model within my own being, my own self, that if I want to do this for a very long time and be a contributor at whatever capacity, I have to find ways to increase the longevity in every area, whether it's from a business perspective or a competitive perspective or just from a cultural perspective. How can I increase all these different things?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Stance Elements. I'm Chaz B. I am your host. This is going to be a good one. Promise you. This is going to be, my God, I don't even know how to open this up. I've got Moy from Havocoro and Monster Energy Breakers with me all the way from the USA. It's really good to see you, man.
Yeah, man, it's so good to see you, and it's nice to see, all the movement that you guys are doing, and the awareness and all of the above. So we're very thankful and may not say it enough, but very much appreciate you guys.
And I appreciate you as well, man. I see that you've got the Monster Energy hat, and actually, something that I want to ask. In actual fact,
Sure.
it hasn't really been said how Monster Energy sort of came into the scene and how the crew has sort of formed. So how about you just open up and say just how things sort of went down initially, and then how this has all come to life.
Yeah, so let me try to summarize that as quick as possible. So, early on, as we know, Red Bull has been a very well supporter of our breaking scene for a very well known supporter of our scene for a very long time. And I remember in 2011 when I was opening up Break Free, and I had this crazy idea of opening Break Free, right? Red Bull had approached me about, trying to find a way to get involved. And just in terms of business, I just don't feel like the alignment was really there. And I got this other crazy idea to start something else. And so I thought about like, hey, well, what's next, right? Why isn't there another energy drink company or another company that's supporting breaking? And so I reached out to Monster as like, Red Bull's biggest competitor, to be very transparent, and Monster thought I was crazy. They thought I was crazy because they weren't sponsoring dance or anything hip hop. And at the time, I think they were slowly getting into hip hop music, but it was still very much a rare thing for them. And so I met with a couple of guys locally here in Houston, and I said, hey, I throw this event called Break Free, and I'm opening up this facility that I would love for you guys to see. And at this point, it wasn't so much about trying to find, the more bang for our buck or the biggest dollar amount that I can receive, because this was a fresh relationship. Red Bull was an existing relationship that the scene already had for 10 years. So I was willing to start from zero with this new company, with Monster, just to show that there is value within our community and that breaking does need to be supported. So very transparently, they thought I was crazy, but they understood where I was coming from. So they were like, look, man, it's just going to be so tough to support breaking and, sponsor breakers. But, let's start with your event and let's figure out like if this is something that we can do. So locally, the team here supported me with like product. They paid for like the floor decal and a few other things that like just really kind of just brought a little bit of life to the event, especially as a young, entrepreneur and a promoter to organizing events at the time. And then at that time, it sparked interest in me to really create something that runs parallel to what Red Bull was doing. And so I told them, without asking for anything, like without asking for money, without asking for an opportunity or give me a shot, organically, I said, hey, do you guys have a hoodie or a hat that, you guys can give me? And I want to represent for you guys. So, one of my guys here, his name's Ty, who still works for the company, who actually oversees a lot of the things that happen in the music marketing department for Monster Music. And he says, sure, meet me up here. He lived in Houston. He gave me a couple of hats and a hoodie. I basically took that hat and that hoodie everywhere I went around the world, whether I was, judging, teaching, competing, and I just hashtag Monster Energy, and I made people know that like I was sponsored without having an official sponsorship, because I made it look like that. And 6 to 8 months literally of doing that, one of Monster's people reached out to me and said, hey, is this you? If this is Moy, we definitely want to find a way to work with you because we're seeing all the work that you're doing and the visibility you're bringing to the brand. How can we support this and how can we do that? And I know that we have a deck that you've created before, and I know we've had conversations in the past with other working members within our organization, and it couldn't work out, but maybe the timing wasn't off. But you have proved to us that we can make something and do something, and there is a following here. And so yeah, this was like in late 2012, early 2013, where they gave me an opportunity, and I said, hey, well, I don't want this opportunity to just be about me. I want to see how we can grow a team. Like if I'm the vehicle, please use me at whatever capacity. Meet me in the middle because it's a partnership, right? I'm just not looking for a sponsorship that enlightens me, but I wanted to enlighten you guys, and I wanted to enlighten others. And so, they were like, well, propose, people or just a program idea that you think that will work for our brand. And I did, and the rest is history, so we got off to a slow start, but we definitely started to make waves. And whether it was a slow or fast start, for me, the most important key thing to take away from this is that an opportunity was created that really inspired a lot of breakers, and put money in breakers' pockets and put a little bit more money into the breaking scene. And essentially those are the things that we need to be able to elevate and scale everything that we're doing. And so, it was just kind of my entrepreneurial spirit and my business mindset that allowed to make these things happen, but also by doing the work. Number one, surrounding myself with the right people. And number three, which is something I really believe in, is just to really believe in what I was doing. And there was not one moment, whether it was going slow or I didn't feel like it was going to happen, there was not one moment that I did not think that this could ever be happen. Even when Monster told me we don't sponsor breakers, we only sponsor extreme sports, that gave me more fuel to my fire to just keep that lit and keep it going and make it happen. And so that's kind of a brief summary of what I would consider a very beautiful story in terms of like what's happening within breaking. And hopefully more breakers can adopt that model, because I feel like a lot of breakers always want to try to achieve what they think they deserve. At this moment, whether I was a quote unquote legend in the game or an upcoming competitor, I never applied what I thought I was worth. I wanted to showcase what I thought I was worth before you can give me what I was worth. And I wanted to showcase and meet them in the middle to show that this is a mutual relationship. And I want to build this relationship. And so I hope that more breakers can adopt that model, because if they adopt this model, there'll be more opportunities for breakers, and there'll be more corporate companies sponsoring and backing the journeys of, upcoming and aspiring breakers.
Dude, that's honestly just such an amazing sort of tale about the faith that you have in yourself, and the more that you persist with it, it will eventually happen, right? And Absolutely. It's probably worth noting as well that in terms of like the fitness element within breaking, you're one of the innovators. There was only a handful of you that were really sort of pushing. I was about to call it a trend. It's not really a trend. It's just like this ethos of like, you have to be physically healthy and fit. So the last thing I want to ask you just before we carry on into something else, when you see Red Bull and you see Monster as this sort of huge entities that are coming into the culture, what do you have to say to people that think that this is a bad thing, that think, why are these energy drink companies coming into our culture when we want healthier alternatives?
Well, I think first off, I think the community needs to be a little bit more receptive with things like this, because there's a lot more negative things that are happening within our community. And if Red Bull or Monster is such a negative thing, I think they're focusing on the wrong thing, right? Because, I hate to put it like this, but there's drugs within our community that are hindering the growth of people's lives. There's alcohol that's hindering the growth of people's lives. There's mental health issues that need support and reinforcement that are hindering the growth of people's lives. And I understand that we may all struggle differently, spiritually, mentally, physically, but there's a lot of other things than that are much bigger, much larger than the concern of having energy drink companies supporting our community. And if people are more receptive to it, they'll start to understand that essentially you just have to learn to leverage the opportunity. Doesn't mean you have to, fully, immerse yourself and engulf, energy drinks every day of your life like you're sipping water. You know what I mean? Everything, right? Whether it's alcohol, smoking, or anything that you do. I'm not saying that all these things are bad, but too much of anything is bad. And so I think to that point, there's too much thought about energy drinks being bad that you're already producing something that really isn't that bad. Because the number one thing that's already bad about that is that you're putting too much thought into something that is actually leveraging our community to grow a little bit faster, rather than putting too much thought on something else that can give you more effort or more insight or more motivation to spark up more interest to bring in more support to the community. So for me, it's all about thought framing, right? How you carry your thoughts and how you do that. And I think there's too much negative thought in this area, in this energy drink category area, than there is in drugs or misbehavior, sexual misconduct, or a lot of different things that can be just addressed very negatively, but handled very positively if we put a bigger, stronger, and thought process on how to look at things with a much brighter and much more successful perspective, rather than putting so much negative energy and thought process about, oh, this is bad for our community. Oh, this is bad. No, look at it like this. How can this be good for our community? And then let's educate the people about what could be bad. But you got to be able to understand both sides. But for me personally, I like to look at things from a more positive lens. And I try to take those thoughts and just try to create something beautiful from it. And so that's just my way of thinking and how I handle things. But I really definitely would say that there's a lot more negative things that are happening within our community than actual energy drinks coming in within our community. So
I would agree with you.
Just a little bit of insight on how I think.
Yeah. And on another note, going back to what I said about you being one of the innovators in terms of like bringing the fitness element in, you recently made a video saying that, okay, the endurance of the dancers is a lot higher and people are more consistent with their energy and more dynamic and everything. However, it's taking away people's ability to be original.
Right.
And I do just want to break this up in just a couple of different ways. First of all, when you introduced the fitness element in and you shared your observations and your workouts and everything like that, what had you observed once you had already shared that? Like at first, like what were some of your first observations?
Yeah, well, for me, first off, one of my observations just within breaking as a whole is that, number one, I'm a huge fan of breaking. Like, I know I've been in it for 28 years, but I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of breakers. I'm a huge fan of breaking organizations. I'm a huge fan of breaking and where breaking is going. So early on, I just adopted a model within my own being, my own self, that if I want to do this for a very long time and be a contributor at whatever capacity, I have to find ways to increase the longevity in every area, whether it's from a business perspective or a competitive perspective, or just from a cultural perspective. How can I increase all these different things? And then so from a physical and competitive perspective, I love battling. Like, I enjoy it, right? Whether I've had good battles or bad battles, like, I enjoy battling. And I want to do this for a very long time. Even if I'm not as active on the competitive playing field today, I am a battler. That's what I grew up growing my name and achieving who I have become today, is by battling. And I think that's one of the most honest things that breakers can do, is an honest exchange with one another. And so I never wanted that to be taken away from me. So how do you increase those levels of like competition within your own self? How do you increase, number one, your drive, to your discipline and your motivation and all these other things that reinforce this thought process and this movement. And I said, well, I got to train differently, because everybody just goes to practice to get better, but not everybody goes to train to go longer.
So what
And
was the training that you did then?
so at the time, it was a lot of honestly trial and error and trying to figure out what it was. But at first I was just taking like, how many 6 steps I could do in 1 minute, just to test my agility and my control. And then within that 60 second time frame, at what point did I lose my form? You know what I mean? Because as you get tired, you start to lose your form. But in fitness, compromising your form is one of the most like biggest no-nos ever. You never compromise your form. And then if you align that to our culture and our community, that's also hand in hand. You don't compromise your form. You always got to look fresh. And so I started to really just early on, just adopt these different ways of just trying to level up in terms of my fitness by, increasing my speed with footwork drills, power move drills, stacking freezes, and then finding a way to also kind of co-breed these two worlds, right? This fitness world with this breaking world. So, I would do jumping jacks for 30 seconds, and then I would do a 30-second footwork round for 30 seconds, and I'll take a break, and then I'll do that again, and then I'll make that 1 rep, and then I'll do like 10 reps. And then this helped me build more stamina, more endurance. And it just allowed me just to get a little bit more creative with that process and just introduce it to the world that like, hey, like fitness doesn't have to be boring. It can still be breaking, but you got to make it your own. There's really no wrong way of making something your own. And that's why when we talk about this process of like, where I feel like, endurance and stamina building is kind of overtaking the originality. If you just listen to what I just said, there's a lot of originality to even modifying your own breaking fitness concepts, because you keep reinventing those things. Because historically, how it should be for all of us is when something gets hard, when something is hard, you try to find a way to make it easy. And then when it gets easy, you got to find a way to make it hard again. Because then if you don't understand these cycles, you will always end up in the same place. And for me, I never wanted to end up in the same place.